Welcome back, legends, to another episode of the League of Inches podcast. My name is Joel Johnston, and I will run through for the next probably 20 or so minutes just my reactions to week one of the NRL trials, which absolutely love sitting there watching every single game. How good was it to see some of the talent on show? And a lot of people the last couple of days probably knocked trials, probably more so the teams that did lose, saying, "Oh, it's not really worth anything." But I really enjoy watching, especially some of that young talent coming through, and I find it a really good way of seeing the depth that clubs have, and just seeing sort of the systems in place. Because when you look at some of the teams on the weekend, and some of the teams started really red hot and had a lot of good their run on team. But when they took them off and let some of these young kids come through, you want to see if they can continue on from what was set there, and to make sure the club policies are coming into play. And then other teams like the Titans, etc., who had sort of their younger side, just to see if they've got a really good frame of mind heading into the season. And to be honest with you, and a bit of a spoiler to getting into those games, I was really, really impressed with a lot of these teams and some of the systems in place. And I was left a little bit eye-opening to see where some of the other teams are at when it comes to that sort of thing, and making sure that there is a system in place to follow. And it is very, very early on, but that's what I look for. And I really excited to see some of this crop of young talent, which I think could be some of the best we've seen for a number of years this year. Like, there's not been a lot of talk about a lot of it, but especially comparing, I guess, last year, especially some of the guys that came through. But I think there's some really, really good, exciting talent coming through. But let's get into it. The first game was obviously the Thursday night game, the Bulldogs versus the Melbourne Storm. And probably more points to talk about when it comes to the Canterbury Bulldogs than the Melbourne Storm. Obviously, the Dogs came into it with probably a much stronger outfit there, and probably because there's a lot more positional battles in the Bulldogs lineup at the moment, especially with the way that they've recruited so many players that we're just unsure of where they're going to land because their utility factor, and they can basically play a number of positions. But a couple of quick ones I wanted to just point out. And look, I thought Reid Marnie was decent from dummy half. He came up with a couple of smart options. There's been a bit of pressure on him and a bit of a knock from him last year. I think he played pretty busted towards that year, and coming from a Parramatta side that was successful with him, to come into that environment would have been quite tough. But I thought he came up with some pretty good options, especially early on when he had a couple of the first grade guys with him and when he was on there. Another sort of one I wanted to take away, and I've got some notes here for pretty much every game, so you'll see me logging down quite a bit for the YouTube watchers. But Sam Hughes is an absolute beast, and you've heard myself and Jesse speak about this guy from a super coach point of view. I still think he's an absolute must, and you'll probably see the post that we have our top 5 must-have players for super coach in 2024 that you must start with from round 1, and he is one of them. He is an absolute beast. From a rugby league point of view, he will be playing quite a few minutes this year. He is extremely fit. I didn't realize he was so big. He's strong. And seriously, like, even if it is coming off the bench, I don't know if he'll get a starting spot from the start, but he may do. He looks that good at the moment. We've heard all the talk in the offseason about how good his offseason has been. I'm really, really excited to see Sam Hughes and the level he will get to this year. Honestly, I have him odds on already for Rookie of the Year. Jamin Salmon, a special shout out playing in that 13 role, who I was a bit skeptical about. I had heard rumors in the offseason about where his role was, and I was hearing it was around that middle sort of forward role. I think everyone assumed because Curran's there, he's just going to be playing 80 minutes or so, especially from a super coach point of view. Everyone would love that because I think he's in a lot of teams this year. But the way that Salmon played, and I think it helped the Bulldogs attack a lot. I was really pleased to see the way the Bulldogs attacked side to side, which I think was a real sticking point, or has been a real sticking point for them for a number of years now. I just think with a few of those little additions, and we haven't even seen like the Crichtons and stuff added to this, but for what they did have, like Marnie to Hutchinson, and Taft there linking up as well, and with Salmon there playing that ball, playing 13 role, I thought it really worked well, and it's got quite a bit of pressure now on Curran, and just where he will actually fit in, how much minutes he will play. I have no doubt he will start the game, But I think Semon's going to eat into quite a bit of his minutes after that performance. And if we can see it again from Semon in trial game week 2, I really like the look of Jaeman Semen in this Bulldogs outfit. Now I can see now what they're talking about, and I actually think it'd be great for the Bulldogs attack having him there in that attacking 13 role after about probably 25 minutes or so when the opposition defense gets a little bit tired. Second final point, I think Bronson Sherry, geez, he looks fit and strong, big center. Like he's one of those go-to guys now for the Bulldogs attack. And I think there was a lot of people talking in the offseason that he needed some time. He needed to go play resis and then come in maybe 5-6 weeks into the season. Going off, I know it was only a trial. I know it wasn't a full-strength Melbourne outfit. I want to go off too early, but I'll be putting him straight in round 1. I think he's there already. And I know we've seen a lot of people take some time to get back into the game once they've had some time away for whatever reasons that is. We don't want to delve back into that too much, but I think Bronson Sherry's right there, ready to go. I feel like, and he's going to be a real big focal point in attack for the Bulldogs. And imagine having him, and if the rumors are correct, Crichton on the other in the other role as a center. Goodness me, the Dogs all of a sudden have some really bright attacking spark on the edges, which they haven't really had for a number of years now. So I'm really excited to see how that helps with the Bulldogs attack. Finally, for mine, I want to talk about the halves battle when it comes to Hutchinson and Toby Sexton. For mine, I already wrote down when I seen Hutchinson that he had the spot locked down. I was really keen to see him with that number 7 jersey for the Bulldogs. But you know what? When Sexton came on in that second half and played, I thought his kicking game was great. His control was really good. And just remember, Hutchinson was on when there was a lot more first-grade talent, where Sexton didn't have that advantage. He was doing a lot by himself, creating for others that, no disrespect, but weren't on the level that some of the players that Hutchinson got to work with in that first half were on. And that really pointed out some stuff to me that I think this battle will go right down to the wire. Like, this is something you have to keep an eye on week 2 of the trial to see how much game time both get, because I think trial week 2 is a lot more realistic for what round 1 will look like. And then the other, I just think we'll go right down to Team List Tuesday for round 1 for the battle for the number 7 spot. So really keen to look at and see what happens there. But honestly, I could make a case for both players, and that's a really good thing for the Dogs. Look, they're probably not 2 of the best 5 or 6, 7, 8 halfbacks in the competition, but what it is, it's depth. It's driving both players to get better day in, day out at training, which is only a benefit for the Bulldogs, once again, trying to improve that roster. Who knows? I'm not saying they're going to be the long-term answer for the Dogs, but for this year moving forward, and all they have to do is play a role to set up this back line. Either players so far have shown that they can do that. Lastly, I just want to quickly mention the Dogs, their youth coming through. Like I spoke at the start of the video about what I look for, and the youth is a huge thing in the depth. The Bulldogs has some really, really good juniors coming through, and I know it's a bit of a cliche when we talk about Phil Gould and the way he sets up clubs, like we've seen Penrith and how good that's been. But I don't think it's any fluke. He's so good at doing this and bringing juniors through and not panicking. I think he's got the same thing happening here for the Bulldogs. And look, I'm not going to declare the Bulldogs going to dynasty anytime soon. I still think there is a lot of work for the Bulldogs to do, but there is definitely some positive signs coming through. And the fact that youth is there for the Dogs, I think if you're a Dogs fan, you're really, really excited, and you should be. For the Melbourne Storm, there wasn't too much I sort of wanted to mention for it. I think Jonah Pezzett was a little bit of a letdown. I know he's just a backup at the moment for the Melbourne Storm once their key playmakers, if they were to go down, but he was constantly under pressure all night from the Bulldogs. That's probably credit to the Bulldogs forwards to really put that pressure on, but I don't think he really dealt with it too well. And I know it's only a trial, but those are the sorts of players you want to see step up in the trials to see sort of put their hand up to push for a spot. I know he would not get ahead of, say, your Munsters and your Hughes, but really wanted to see him get to that next bit of level. And once the pressure was put on him to adjust his game, I just didn't really see it. Pappenhausen, how good was that try? Like, I declared it in a joking manner, but I do, in a way, think it's the best thing for Pappenhausen, that try. We saw his pace. Like, I think I've seen in an interview afterwards, he said he's only at 95% still with his pace from what it was in his peak years. But honestly, like, that's exactly what you wanted to see him take off if I'm a Melbourne Storm supporter, I'm loving that. And I think we can see Pappenhausen now full of confidence, which I think he lacked last year when he did come back. This year is dangerous. Please stay on the field. And he's super coach point of view. I have him as a must at the moment because that'll be the cheapest you'll get him. You may as well grab him now and enjoy the ride. That's it for that game. Let's move on. I want to talk about the Knights and the Sharkies. On for mine, for the big point I want to talk about for this game, basically revolve around the Newcastle Knights. The main one, I think, is the halves battle. I think there's obviously a 3-0 battle there for two spots. Everyone has had their say. I've put a post out. Obviously, Cooper Cronk had his say, which then meant a lot of people had their say on the page, which we absolutely love. Keep those sorts of things coming in every time we put a post up. We just want to talk rugby league. I'll say it now, and I've said it before. I have Cogger and Hastings as my halves pairing, and that's no knock on Tyson Gamble. I think Tyson Gamble can do a really good job in that Jamin Salmon type role, coming off the bench, coming into that middle sort of third of the field and just targeting some tired forwards and adding that extra bit of playmaking. I think that's a huge thing we're going to see this year when it comes to attack for teams, that having that bit smaller of a guy, but that can do a real good job in the middle once there's some tired defense. And I think that's going to be a crucial role for a lot of these teams that play a lot of that high attacking intensity football. And that's something that the Knights are looking like they're going to play already this year. And you add Ponga to the mix there. There's so many players there for the Knights. If they were to go with that sort of options, I think it'd be a nightmare for defenses to defend. So that's how I would go. I think Cogger just came on and added he just settled things down once again. And Hastings was doing the same thing when he was on, but I think the Knights started really panicky at the start, and that's probably just to getting used to things. But I thought when Cogger did come on, just eased everything for a while. He kicked a 40-20 almost straight away as soon as he touched the ball, which was a little classy touch. And look, I want to mention as well, I know he won't get a start there while Pong's there, but Fletcher Sharp looks really, really good at fullback. He has some really good touches, a high energetic fullback, which is something that you all know I love in my fullbacks. I think he has a really good, bright future. It'd be interesting to see how long he does stay at Newcastle, as long as Ponga stays at the back, which you can't obviously entertain the thought of changing him at the moment, but definitely something to keep an eye on there. Dylan Lucas, for mine, a special mention for the Newcastle Knights as well. Absolutely on fire. 2 tries. There is obviously so many players there playing for that edge spots at Newcastle. I don't know if he'll get a starting spot ahead of Piers Paul, we've heard a lot about in the preseason. And obviously, it's hard because there is such an preseason. We've seen now Dylan Lucas do it in the season, but then you also got Tyson Frizzell as well. So it's obviously 3 classy players there. 3 into 2 obviously don't go. So it'll be interesting what happens. But even Dylan Lucas off the bench playing a 50-minute role is something really, really dangerous. And saying the Knights fans, they've got some good depth coming through this year. So really, really excited there. Let's move on. I didn't want to talk too much about the show. I didn't see much at all. It's hard because I had both Nico and Trindle out, so it was hard for them to do really anything. I was disappointed not to see Iro and Cade Dykes get enough ball and a lot of attacking footy, which I think they're both really, really bright future players. I'd have them both arguably in my Sharks team somewhere in that back line, just to add a bit more spark. But it was just unfortunate we didn't get to see much of that spark because the Knights were pretty dominant once they got their handling errors out of the way and was able to play some football. But something to keep an eye out for, see how they use him in week 2, because if anything, I thought Talakai, once he did come on, he made a few errors. He wasn't great. And he was on in the second half when it wasn't the first grade sort of talent was starting to come off for the Knights. So that's a bit eye-opening for mine. Interesting to see if Talakai will become a bench forward option or not, or if Fitzy will make that decision. He hasn't wanted to make that decision yet, but I think they're starting to make some cases there with some good young talent coming through. Those 2 guys I did mention before, very, very good rugby league NRL football players who should be at that level in my eyes. Next game, Roosters versus Manly. Obviously, first of all, just shout out to Dom Young, making he is healthy again. He's out of hospital. Obviously, there is that neck injury. It's horrible to see. Looks basically being confirmed he will miss the Vegas clash, which is unfortunate. Maybe a week or 2 after that as well, where they're not too sure. Nothing absolutely confirmed yet, but Just unfortunately, and you never want to see injuries in trials. That's the main thing I always want to not see in trials is injuries, and players and clubs get affected straight away by injuries. And unfortunately, we've seen that. And it would have been so exciting to see Dom Young playing in Vegas and those dreadies flowing, going down the wing, exactly what sort of players we need to be advertising and showcasing this great game of ours to the audience of the United States and whoever else around the world will be watching. But I thought Suaalii looked a lot more comfortable at centre. I was sort of critical of him and thought he needs to go back to the wing this year, and I couldn't have not have Billy Smith in the side. But obviously, Manu has an absolute nailed down spot in one of the centres, so I feel like it's between Suaalii and Billy Smith to get that other centre role. And obviously, with the Dom Young injury, I think Suaalii will go to the wing to start the season. It'll be interesting what happens after that. But obviously, Billy Smith was getting smashed. But what I loved was he kept getting up and he kept going again. And then in the second half, he turned it around a bit and played a lot better footy, I thought, which if I was a coach, I like to see that. I like to see a player that has gotten smashed and he won't get intimidated by it. He'll get up, he'll go again. And we've seen Billy Smith with his injury worries in the past. He probably could have easily, in a trial game, crawled into his shell and gone, nah, I don't want to risk anything this game. But he kept going and going and he set up a try, scored a try himself, and thought it was really good. James Tedesco for the Sydney Roosters was everywhere. That was good and bad for it. I'm not going to say I'm excited, but the fact that he's everywhere straight away and the errors were handling errors and things like that, that's something he can fix up. The fact that he still wants to be on the ball and sniffing around the ruck, around the Roosters forwards, getting the offloads is very, very dangerous. So come the next couple of weeks, they fix that up, come to Vegas round one. If Teddy's still playing that way and we know how great of a player he is, he'll fix up the handling errors, no doubt at all in my mind about that. I think it shows good things for Tedesco this year. And I keep trying to mention a little bit of Supercoach stuff. I still have him as a smoky fullback option and someone to start with. If you don't want to go right up to the top, I think he'll get a job done for you. Lastly, on the Roosters, two things, sorry. I want to mention to Connor Watson, who's come back from a big injury, obviously missed basically all of last year. He'll be great off the bench this year and put a lot of pressure on Brandon Smith. I thought when he came on, he provided some real spark for the Sydney Roosters, exactly the way that they look like they'll be playing this year, and I absolutely loved it. So shout out to Connor Watson. I thought he was brilliant on the weekend and can't wait to see him play a lot more footy this year and be a real strike in attack for the Sydney Roosters, something that I think they were missing last year. That extra added firepower off the bench is something he will bring, and I can't wait to see that. Lastly, Satili Tupouniua, I think he's a forgotten man for 2024. I remember 2 years ago, he was arguably one of the best second rows in the competition. A lot of people not talking about him this year because there's obviously Wong, there's Crichton there, the Butcher brothers. Satili Tupouniua for mine looks like he could get that edge starting spot for the Roosters. And I just seen little things in his game on the weekend to suggest that's that little bit of element of class that the Roosters missed last year. And to have him there, and look, he won't be playing 80 minutes with the quality that the Roosters will have to have on their bench. But he can get through a quality 55, 60 minutes or so for the Roosters week in, week out. He's a quality player and really, really excited to see him get back hopefully to his best, which I think a lot of people out there forget how good that is. So credit to Satili. Manly, there's not too much to say there because they were obviously a lot more under strength than the Roosters were and rested even players who played the week before that in Brooks, etc. But they did hold it with the Roosters for quite a while there, especially this first half. Although Arthur and Wakeham, obviously they're both the reserve playmakers for the Sea Eagles this year, struggled quite a bit to maintain control in their kicking game. So there'll definitely be things they need to go away and work on. Obviously not in contention at the moment for round one, but they'll be wanting to be used at some point through the especially DCE with Origin, etc., injuries and the like. Both need to make sure they just brush up on that a bit and get ready for when they are called up. Moving on, I think for the Parramatta Eagles versus Raiders game, Parramatta shot out of the gates to an early 10-0 lead and things looked pretty good. Then the Raiders young guns, honestly, can we talk about the Raiders first before I get into the Eagles? And they've got some really great young talent in this team, and there's a lot of people, including myself, predicting the Raiders to drop quite significantly in 2024. One thing I will say is, even if that is the case, what you're going to get week in, week out from the Raiders is a tough, gritty football side, and no two competition points will come easily for you. You got to be getting ready for a war. Like, it may not be the most skillful side in the competition. It may not have the most rep players in the competition, but you know what you'll get week in, week out. You're going to get bruises when you play them, and that's the type of football Ricky Stewart will have them. He'll have them every week talking to them, saying, this team has written you off. These groups of fans have written you off this year. The media's written you off. Go out there week in, week out, show us what you can do. And he's got a football team there that will do that. They came out with purpose, I thought, on the weekend. It was only a trial, in quotation marks, it's only a trial, but I felt like a lot of their players came out with a point to prove exactly that. They're not going to be here to be messed with this year. They've got a point to prove. A lot of these young players were playing for extensions, longer contracts. They want to be there because I anticipate the Raiders being a big force in the next couple of years. They've got some great young talent. A lot of these talent will want to be there for when their top eight football are playing finals football, etc. So really, really excited to see that. I think KOX was all right in attack. I think defense he was targeted a little bit, especially early on. He struggled. Something he will have to get used to being in the front line defensively. And but I can't knock him anywhere else. Chevy Stewart, I thought, was really, really good at the fullback position. Just had a little bit of moments, just showing everyone what he's got and why he's the fullback at the moment. I think he will start there. So definitely a super coach player to look out for. For the Eels, look, I feel like I'm a Parramatta fan, and everyone knows that now. And I feel like I'm a bit harsher on Parramatta when I say things, and I don't want people to take it the wrong way. It's just that I am a passionate fan. I try and be as neutral as possible when it comes to this sort of thing where I am criticizing or talking up teams for their performances. Or maybe I am a bit not one-eyed in a good way, but one-eyed in a bad way. But please don't take that the wrong way. I'm just a passionate fan that wants to see the best for my club, and the start was great. The start was, I think we're seeing this. The game plan for the Eels is very attack off offload. So the forwards go up, the offload, second phase footy, and that's all well and good. But the problem with that is that that's been a style of football now that the Eels have played for a couple of years. And the thing I saw us go back into, and a lot of people say the first grade stars weren't there, etc. I understand that, but I spoke about at the start of the video where everything falls through the club, and that's what I like to see has happened in the off season with these trial games, especially the first one where it's a lot of the second grade sort of talent in the side and seeing what they're learning from training with the first full-time squad, etc. I'm a little bit worried that the game plan for the Eels already hasn't really changed, and that's been a concern for mine from last year as well, where we seem to play the same way we've played from 2022 being the grand final, and it's very forward dominant, which I understand you need to get some dominance in your forwards, but we seem to go to that next level with it, and we just bash the shit out of our forwards to the point where it's no standing, like they can't stand anymore. And I think that's a little bit of a worry. I think we need to start to change the way we play slightly. I know it's only the first trial. The Raiders were clearly up for it to prove a point to everyone. Do not write us off. But that was just something I wanted to mention there for the Parramatta Eels. I won't go too much more into it because I could go for hours, but I don't want to bore anyone with that. Just one last thing. I also thought that the first up contact in defence for the Eels was a worry. And these are players like Rumu, Greg, Opahiki, Ogden, and the like are players that we will need in this season. We can't rely on having a full strength 17 week in, week out. These players are coming off the bench. They're going to be playing 30 or so minutes a game. We need to see them a bit more physical and a bit more dominant. I just didn't see that when the Raiders were really coming at us. And I know a lot of players, they don't want to push too much. They don't want to risk injuries, etc. But it just would have been nice to see one of those players who haven't got a starting role sewn up. For mine, they're still effectively out there playing for a jersey. It would have been nice to see one of them sort of step up and go, you know what, we know what you guys are up to. Let's stop it now. But that's it for that one. The Charity Shield, Dragons versus the Rabbitohs. Look, there's not much to say about the Rabbitohs. Great performance in the end because they were obviously depleted. I think special shout out to Cam Murray, who really held that side together, was able to ball play when he's seen necessary or just take the hard runs and just really keep that side gelled together, even missing a lot of their stars. Jai Gray, what a talent. I am so keen to see how the Rabbitohs inject him this year at different points of the year, when they use him and how they use him. What a future. What an absolute future ahead for that guy. But I want to more so speak on the Dragons. And I've got to be honest, if I don't want to be too harsh on them, and it was a trial. They did start okay. I will say that right now. I thought the Dragons will look much more together as a team, which is great to see because I think they've been quite distant as a team in the last couple of years. They're just sort of very individualized. The fact that they looked more like a team, especially in that first half, was great to see. They were very gritty. The worry is the attack still is not there. And the worry for mine is they're not picking their main players where they should be playing to spark that sort of attack. And I'm talking about someone like Zach Lomax, who we heard in the offseason, Flanagan has a plan for him. I'm all for Flanagan being the Dragons coach. I think it's a great thing for him moving forward. But what Lomax's plan was to put him on the wing, restrict him even more. All their go-to plays for Zach Lomax is a crossfield kick, which every team in the NRL will now know is coming, and it's getting a lot easier to defend, even though there is penalties for it. Teams will continue to defend that way, take the penalty instead of costing their side the try. You've got to be doing a lot more to get Zach Lomax involved. Now, it might come across harsh, but Tyrell Sloan, for mine, isn't up to it. He has been given so many chances here at the Dragons to perform at fullback, has failed to do so. And people can say he's a young kid he's coming through, but we've seen someone like Buller for the Tigers have a handful of games. Now he's had 10, maybe maximum 15 games, and he's established himself. He has taken it upon himself to prove both in attack and defense, he's an NRL quality player. I know he's an extreme example. He's a very, very good player. He's a very, very good example, but he also hasn't had as much time in the game as what Sloan has done. Sloan has been spoken about now for years, absolutely years in this game. And I just think there's got to be a time where if I'm Flanagan, I'm sitting down with Sloan, I'm going, sorry, mate, we cannot start you this year. You can go back to reserve grade, prove to us what you can do, have some consistency in your game and absolutely tear that level of competition up. And then if something happens to Lomax, who I would be personally putting at fullback, I need Lomax to have as much time with the ball as possible. I would, if he's happy with Bird and Sully in the centers, which I've got hesitations with for Bird side of things, but I need Zach Lomax he's my most attacking dominant player at the Dragons alongside Ben Hunt. He's the most dangerous player in that football side. Get him the ball as much as possible, have him around the ball as much as possible. Put him on the wing is not the answer. Let us know, though, Dragons fans, what you think in the comments if you are watching on YouTube, or message the page if you listen to the podcast. Let us know what you think. But personally, I just think Sloan is not the fullback option moving forward. I'd give the keys to that castle to Lomax and see what he can do. That's it on that game. Quick shout out to Little. I thought Little was okay from dummy half. There was a couple of times he chose to run at great times, showing a little bit more of a spark in attack. Keen to see what he can produce early on in the year, and maybe a sneaky super coach Little offer there, because I don't know. He should be playing close to 80 minutes week in, week out. The Warriors versus the Tigers. Tell you what, early on, Appy Coruscant was the class above in this game. He showed his pure class in this. It was like he was playing with puppets. It was insane to watch, and just reminded me just how good he is as a player and how crucial he is to the West Tigers this year. Another shout out to the actual Tigers spine itself, who I thought early on especially actually looked quite good. There's a lot to be excited about there for the West Tigers. It looks like what they're doing in training has worked. Look, there's arguments that they were down. The Warriors were down to 12 men for a majority of that game, and it probably should have been put away in the soil. But don't forget, in trials, there's unlimited bench, so you can keep working over those Warriors forwards for quick stints and just keep showing up, and it makes it a lot harder. Granted, Tigers probably should have put on a couple more tries, but they're still in a work in progress stage, and I think there's enough there for the West Tigers fans to be excited about, be pleased about. And look, a win's a win at the end of the day. For the Warriors, I just want to touch on RTS. Pure quality. Absolutely looks like he has been in the game and hasn't had a few years off. So people were hesitant from both a super coach point of view and a rugby league point of view, just how he'll be when he comes back. Hasn't missed a beat. It looks like he's continued to play throughout the years, and what a player to add to the Warriors, both in terms of his skill, how how good he's on his feet. He gets in and does the hard work. He's not afraid of that. But his leadership, he looks like there was times like yesterday where I felt like, as I said, being down to 12 men, he sort of just got the boys together, just provided some calming influence and just said, let's not panic, let's get through our work. He's that style of player. When you add players like Johnson to that team as well, Tohu Harris, there is so much leadership there. Capewell as well. Plenty of people are writing the Warriors off this year saying they're sliding. For mine, they're not sliding. If anything, I can see them improving. I actually think they're right in this competition up to their eyeballs, and do not sleep on the New Zealand Warriors this year. That's about it. One thing I did want to say on a negative for the Warriors is Freddie Lustick. I just thought was pretty average, if I've got to put it bluntly. Constantly sort of coming up with the wrong decisions yesterday. I think added a bit of pressure to Metcalf, who I thought didn't do himself any justice for that 7 jersey. I think he's a standout 5'8", and that's where he should stay, not in that 7 jersey. But I don't think that helped either. He was getting Lustick's balls off, plenty of errors. Lustick just wasn't doing a good job. And I know he's not the starting hooker, but he will be used a bit this year, and another one of those players that needs to go away to reserve grade, play his trade early on and work on those errors that he was making, because it wasn't a great showing. Broncos versus the Cowboys in the first of the Queensland trial games. Look, I put the Broncos down in my post today as one of the teams that really impressed me, and a lot of people going, "Oh, they put down their strongest pretty much their strongest side against the Cowboys reserve grade side." Of course, it was going to happen. Blah blah blah. They probably should have put more points on it. I understand it, but you also got to think the things that I'm talking about and I'm seeing is the fact that every time they tried to put one of their little backline moves on, a try came from it, or a break or something like that came from it. And it just looked really, really crisp for those backline. That's a focal point for the Broncos attack. Reynolds to Mam, and then to Reece Walsh, and then he goes out the back or plays to Peter Kuru, which he did a few times yesterday and looked really, really good, that combination. Those sorts of things is what I was looking at and commenting on. I really liked that, and I thought they just looked like they hadn't stopped playing. It looked like they just carried their form on from last year. I do have the Broncos slipping a little bit, but from what I've seen yesterday, they got this sort of hunger in their eyes that they know what happened last year. They don't need to be reminded of what happened last year in that grand final. And it looks like the players are so switched on. They don't want to mess around. They're there to win football games, get the job done in 80 minutes. See you later. Let's move on to the next job, which really, really good signs for the Broncos. Cowboys, there's not too much to say about there. I thought Valame was really good, and Finiaki was really good. Both of them might have put their hands up for starting roles, and I think we'll get it. I really, really liked both players. I thought they were really good yesterday in a weakened Cowboys side. Finally, the Dolphins versus the Titans trial. First of all, Herbie Farnworth and Jermaine Asako, I've heard a lot of people say from both a Supercoach point of view and a rugby league point of view that Herbie's going to hurt Asako's game. I can understand to a certain extent. Herbie is notorious for being a sort of a more running center, but yesterday that combo was actually working really well. There's a few flick passes from Herbie, and that's a dangerous, dangerous combination. I could make a very strong case to saying there'll be a top 3 winger center combination in this game come this year in 2024, and we'll be looking back on the season going, wow, those two are absolutely freakish together. So I really liked the early bit, what I've seen there. Again, the Dolphins are really, really strong. They named a really strong side. The Titans didn't. But I think that's because the Dolphins are working on some combinations. This is their second year into the NRL. Let's not forget that. They're not an established side. They're still working on combinations, even from players that were there from last year. Like, Rome's not built in a day. You need to take time to build into the seasons. And I think the the Dolphins are still doing that, which I really like the fact that Wayne Bennett went strong and went hard for that trial yesterday. I don't think the players were at 100%. Like, people are trying to say Flegler, like he didn't make a big of an impact, but I don't think they were going hard. That they were sort of just going through the motions to set up at point A's, point B's, point C's on the field, and then just go through the motions. I wouldn't take much away from the fact that they didn't smash the Titans early on when they had their team, etc. So I don't look at that. I don't think that's a big thing. But one fun thing on the Dolphins, Jeremy Marshall King, he's so crucial to the Dolphins this year. Like from little things I've seen yesterday, he's up there with for my happy how he's for the West Tigers. That's JMK for the Dolphins. He needs to stay on the field for the Dolphins to really push for that top 8 spot. If they lose him for any amount of time, I'm worried about him. The other player I really loved seeing back was Tommy Gilbert. He's the heart and soul of that footy team. Flegler, he will be the big boss, but Gilbert will be that guy that stays in there with everyone in the trenches and just be the reliable guy. So, especially out to Val Tafari, who looks really fit. I know there's a lot of things spoken about him in the preseason, but I really, really liked what I've seen from Val Tafari. And Bostock, I think, did himself all the favors for that wing spot. Really like him. Big, strong, fast finishing winger. I think he has got the wing spot. So if you are looking at a Supercoach point of view, he could be a smoky to go for. I think he's only around that 300K mark as well. For the Titans, I say there's not much to talk about there just because of obviously there was a lot of NRL talent missing. But from what there was there, one thing I'll say, they have what a future they have got. And even for the Dolphins, when their young guns came on in the second half, both sides, they got some of the brightest young guns in the competition coming through. And I'm excited for both of these teams moving forward, what they can produce in the next couple of years. And don't sleep on either of these teams. I think they've got bright futures in the game. And for the Titans, like the Des era is in full effect. They defended so well yesterday. I know I'm saying the Dolphins for mine weren't throwing absolutely everything at them, but the Titans defense was also really, really good. So they had to be there and show up. Otherwise, there could have been some easy tries there for the Dolphins, and they did that. And that's what Des Hazard would really like to see from the Titans side. And again, I say filters down through the grades at training, and that's obviously something that's happening at the Dolphins this year, which going off, and I've gone down to a couple of trainings for the Titans and just watched sitting there in the car and stuff, and it hasn't always been the case in other years, and I feel like this year more than ever, it's a real club vibe, and that's all thanks to Des Hazard and the influence he's bringing to that club. And Tony Francis on the wing, another one of those really strong wingers. He won't obviously start the year on the wing, but I can see him putting a lot of pressure on throughout probably mid-season. He'd be knocking down the door there for a spot, and a great place to be. I thought Tommy Weaver was quite good as well for the Titans. So obviously Boyd looks like he would get that 7 spot, but I'll tell you what, they're not missing much to have Tommy Weaver there as well. And credit to him. That's about it for mine. The first week of the wrap-up. I'll try and do these every week, so let me know in the comments what you think. I was going to turn it into an Instagram live video, but I think it's better just do it this way, and you guys can listen on your own terms, and either the podcast or the YouTube page. But I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments. As I said, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments there. If you're listening on podcast, go get around our social media pages, send the page a message, or get involved with some of the posts that have been put up, and let us know your thoughts on the trials on the weekend. I had the pad and pen segment after every game, and that was received really well, so that'll continue. But yeah, bring on trial week 2. There's plenty of videos this week as well for the League of Inches. We'll have your super coach, our top 5 per position players, myself and Jesse for that one. And from a League of Inches live video, that'll be on Wednesday. That'll be our prediction show as well. So you want to get around that one, make sure you're following us on YouTube and Facebook. You'll get notifications about those shows, and tune in, get involved. We always like to see everyone getting involved, talking footy with us, and let us know your predictions for this year ahead as well. Enjoy, guys. Have a good either day, night, however you're listening, and thanks for supporting League of Inches.